supposed to be one of the most photographed views in America. The Lincoln Memorial, leading the eye straight to the Washington Monument. But it's been looking a little green, more than the promised American flag blue. Let's go back a tick. In 2010, a major rehabilitation project began, costing about $30.7 million. As the pool had actually sunk about a foot over 90 years. 1922, right, into the marshy ground it was built on. That renovation added a real filtration and circulation system for the first time ever. Before that, the pool had to be drained and refilled twice a year just to keep it clean, quote unquote. It ended up reopening in 2012. Now, almost immediately though, the algae began to bloom. Weeks after opening, costing $100,000 now. But even with those upgrades, algae returned quickly because this just an engineering problem. Fast forward to 2026. Ahead of the nation's 250th anniversary on July 4th, just over 2 weeks from now, with a parade, naval review, and fireworks finale on the National Mall, crews carried out another major round of work, including resealing the basin and recoating the surface. The goal was simple: improve appearance and reduce leakage before global spotlight hits the National Mall. Yet, the same administration spent roughly $15 million on a no-bid pool contract with no transparent line item history to compare it against, no public baseline for judging whether it was a good deal, and no consistent accounting of what routine maintenance has cost over the decades. The same administration has pushed for federal enforced medical price transparency in 2021, which accelerated enforcement of hospital price transparency rules requiring hospitals to publish their actual negotiated rates, was premised on a simple idea that Americans cannot make informed decisions without the value being known and what things actually cost. So shed some light on hidden pricing, consumer empowerment, and accountability, says the government. Standards that are being demanded of hospitals, yet is the government playing into itself. The real question is, what will now the cost be for this current algae, and will the administration uphold its own standards by publishing the negotiated rates of reflecting pool costs as expected out of today's hospitals? The reflecting pool is shallow, exposed to full sun, constantly receiving nutrients from runoff sediment and wildlife like ducks and geese. In ecological terms, it behaves less like a controlled pool and more like a living pond. Algae's been part of this pool since the start, 1822. Right now, the response is active management, ozone nanobubbles, hydrogen peroxide treatments, and manual cleaning. These methods limit blooms without the harsher impacts of chlorine, but are ongoing interventions, not permanent fixes. That same pattern shows up across Yellowstone, the Boundary Waters, Yosemite, and the Great Smoky Mountains. Places immeasurably worse ecological condition than the reflecting pool. Places losing the staff and monitoring infrastructure that prevents actual irreversible damage, in places that generate enormous public value that quietly erodes when the land degrades. Doge having saved $1.7 billion by cutting 400 plus grants targeting clean air, water monitoring, chemical testing modules, pollution studies near refineries, and environmental justice initiatives, are now raising concerns about long-term research gaps and pollution responses elsewhere in the U.S. that are just as picturesque to live in, until they also are not. There's no published comparative maintenance ledger for any of them either, so Americans still cannot answer the question that should be obvious. Are we spending proportionally on what we value, or are we spending visibly on what photographs well while quietly defunding what actually holds the country's national infrastructure together? Without itemized, consistent, publicly comparable cost data across federal assets, the same transparency being demanded of a hospital building a knee replacement, that question remains unanswerable. And an unanswerable question is a convenient one for anyone who would rather we not look too closely at the answer.